everyone, and welcome to yet another edition of Across the Goal Line, a sports podcast brought to you by diehard fans. Corey Maines with me as always is Luke Goddessart, and today we bring you many results from some big sporting events that took place this weekend. We have UFC 202 and the much anticipated McGregor Diaz fight, as well as both WWE pay-per-views that were in Brooklyn, NXT Takeover Brooklyn 2, and SummerSlam. Full results and grades for each of those. At least for me, I'm not sure about Luke. Also, we have a special preview of sorts for fantasy. Yeah, we also have preview of sorts for fantasy football, helping you decide who to pick for your team. And to kick off the show this week, we have the NASCAR result from this Sunday from Bristol. But first, the results from the question of the week last week, in which we asked you who was going to win that McGregor-Diaz fight. And you guys were in favor of McGregor, 86% to 14% Diaz. And if you actually watched UFC 202 and listen to this right now, if you know what happened already, then good on you there, viewers. Because McGregor did win. We'll get to that in a short bit. But, of course, I already mentioned that we're going to start with some NASCAR today.
It was a good fight.
It was a good 5-round fight. We'll get to it when we talk about UFC 202. So, NASCAR, like I said, from Bristol on Sunday after rain had pushed it back from its original planned Saturday night race that it was going to be. And Kevin Harvick won this one. Also want to mention that rain was also present on Sunday as well. Pushed it later into the day than it was supposed to be as well. Kevin Harvick won his second at Thunder Valley and his second of the season. Also 33rd of his career. And runner-up in this race with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. And behind Harvick, who won this race by 1.933 seconds here on the little over half-mile track here at Bristol. Behind him, because he dominated most of the race, led 128 laps. It was kind of sloppy and out of control because of it being in Bristol. There's a lot of commotion and a lot of rough racing, I would say. I'm not quite sure. I'm not 100% a connoisseur of NASCAR.
Well, it's a short track. There's always a lot of wrecks, and as you said, it rained too, so that was a factor. Going into the race, and then with everything that happened.
Yeah. Speaking of Harvick, he was quoted saying that we should have won a lot of races this year, but we just had things not go our way. And I already mentioned he led for 128 laps, and he pulled away for his last stretch of leading after a brief rain shower, speaking of the rain, which caused the ninth and final caution of the race with 66 laps remaining. So he took the lead on that restart and ended up winning this race. I already mentioned that Ricky Stenhouse Jr. came in second. The rest of the top five was Austin Dillon coming in third. Not him. Danley Hamlin came in third. After being down 2 laps in the race, he was 2 laps down, ended up getting them back, finishing in third. Austin Dillon came in fourth, not third, as I just said a minute ago.
Austin Dillon drives a number 3 Chevy, though.
Yes, okay.
That's probably why you said that.
Yeah, maybe. And Chris Buescher just won a few weeks ago at Pocono for his first ever NASCAR victory. Was in 5th place, and that 5th place finish put him into 30th place in the Sprint Cup standings, which actually puts him in the chase now, because this is a thing that I just kind of recently figured out, that even if you have a win, you still need to be within the top 30 in points in the standings to actually make the chase, and he was not entering this race. So getting into 5th place finish here, moves up to 30th, and now he's officially into the chase, but he still has to put in some good performances the last couple races here. We have just 3 remaining until the chase gets underway.
Chicagoland on September 18th is when the chase actually starts.
Yes, so we have just 3 more races now. Next week they're in Michigan, and then a couple more before then.
Darlington, and then I think they go back to Dover, to be honest with you. Or Dover might be in October. Obviously Michigan and Darlington the next 2 weeks. I'm not sure about the third.
But yeah, they got those couple more races, and then the chase starts. So Buescher, he needs a couple more good performances like this, keep him in that at least 30th position, hopefully, and maybe even better, give him a little bit of leeway in the final race or so. But we'll have to see about him maybe making the chase. It'd be interesting to see a guy that wins a race still not make the chase, because that's kind of the big thing about the chase now, getting into the chase. If you win, you're in. But this guy might not make it despite winning a race. I mean, he did win a rain-shortened race. Speaking of rain delays, that Pocono race was also pushed the day forward. It was raced on Monday, supposed to be on Sunday.
Both races at Pocono this year.
Both of them have. And then the actual race was actually rained out most of the way through on that Monday.
Yeah.
That's why he won, because he just so happened to be in the lead when they called the race. So Boucher, we're just going to stop talking about him for a little bit. But good win for Harvick. We'll go back to the actual race winner here, Kevin Harvick, the number 4 car. Nice thing he did after the race, he invited Tony Stewart to go and do some burnouts with him after the race. I believe he said that he wanted Tony to do like a victory lap with him, but Stewart just decided to do donuts. He came in 30th, Tony did, after some mechanical problems.
His last race at Bristol.
So a nice gesture by Hamlin, who I think it's the owner or something, or Tony Stewart's the co-owner of his
Tony Stewart is co-owner of Stewart Haas Racing. It has Kurt Busch, Danica Patrick, and Kevin Harvick, I believe, as well. That's why they were the 3 of them. Busch wasn't involved. Harvick, Stewart, and Danica Patrick. They were trying to get a picture, all 3 of them lined up, and then, as you said, tried to do a victory lap. But then Danica decided not to, and then Tony did donuts. Did a little burn up there with Harvick. Yep. But yeah, that Stewart Haas Racing is co-owned by Tony Stewart, hence the name.
Yeah. So again, nice gesture by Harvick for the retiring Tony Stewart. All right, as mentioned previously, we're going to get into UFC 202 with that Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz fight, which we already talked a little bit about. We'll get to that at the very end because it was the main event of the night. There was 4 matches before that on the main card with 10 or so on the preliminary rounds on like Fox Sports 1 and stuff that we've talked about that before.
Yeah.
They put them on Fox Sports 1 and regular Fox or whatnot.
Yep.
So 4 more fights, 3 welterweight fights, 1 light heavyweight fight. If you watched our preview listened to our preview last week, we already mentioned that all these fights are basically welterweight fights.
Yep.
Tim Means defeated Sabah Hamasi by TKO punches 2 minutes 56 seconds into the second round to win this match. Mike Perry defeated Huynh Gyu Lim by TKO, also by punches 3:38 into the first round. And that other welterweight fight before the only light heavyweight fight in the entire card. Donald Cerrone defeated Rick Story by TKO as well. This one with a head kick and punches, not just punches as the other 2 fights did. 2 minutes and 2 seconds into the second round. That light heavyweight fight was won by Anthony Johnson, beating Glover Teixeira by KO 13 seconds into the first round. Very impressive fight there. Or at least performance by Johnson. Not really impressive fight because it was just over just like that. And then the main event, we already said, or at least I alluded to, Conor McGregor defeated Nate Diaz by majority decision in this one, a 5-round fight. Scores were 48-47, 47-47, and 48-47 in favor of the Irishman McGregor. So I know a lot of people, at least people in our poll, voted for McGregor. We didn't, personally, in our predictions, but also a bunch of analysts on like ESPN and such, they were voting for Diaz too, which was interesting because they thought Diaz was going to win because, he won the first one, and they're like, well, maybe McGregor's lost it a little bit or something, and all this press conference crap that's going on, it's going to be a distraction, stuff like that. But McGregor came out on top. It kind of was an interesting decision. I saw a bunch of people online, they were talking about how it was kind of BS that he got the decision, that Diaz was actually the better fighter in this match. They just gave it to McGregor, kind of as an even up the series type of thing.
Yeah, pretty much just because, and then, they called each other out, do a third fight. We'll have to see if that happens. I know a lot of MMA fans and people in general would probably like to see it. I know I would. Obviously, both fighters are getting paid a lot of money to fight like this, but, as I said, I think a lot of people would like to, see a third and final fight happen. When it happens, who knows? But yeah, the fight was pretty much down the middle, I thought. Diaz had some better punches than I thought McGregor did, but it is what it is, and he got the majority decision.
You talked about that third fight possibility, and that just goes back to that. Maybe people think it's kind of a little controversial on the call because of that third fight possibility.
Yep.
Having them be 1-1, it makes that possibility happen. It's a surefire money getter. These two guys put on an absolute show outside of the octagon. in the press conferences and such, because this rivalry is just so heated between these two guys. It's just straight money for the UFC. So maybe just a little bit they just lean towards McGregor because of the possibilities of what can happen with a third fight. So, I mean, that's kind of like a conspiracy theory, so to speak, of this fight and of this pay-per-view, so to speak, you know?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I agree with it, somewhat. I mean, it is about the money, when it comes down to it for most things. And that's probably what they're, trying to do is have McGregor win and then, get a third possible fight out of the two of them. But like I said, we'll have to find out and see when that fight happens. Who knows? Dana White did say it's not going to be in the near future. So I don't see it happening by the end of the year. If it does happen, I was thinking maybe they wait a while and maybe at like UFC 250 or maybe UFC 300, which was going to be a while from now. And those guys will be a couple years older. Who knows if they'll still be fighting by then. They might have to do it before then. That's why I said like UFC 250. But we'll have to see. I think UFC 300 would be the perfect place because it's the third fight between the two of them. UFC 300, everything just makes sense there, promotional wise, and it just makes sense. So we'll have to see if the fight happens.
Yeah, it's basically what's going to be if there will be a third fight. If UFC's smart, they probably will do a third fight because of the money that they can make off of a fight like this, the promotion from the fight. These guys just sell it perfectly because of the rivalry, the feud that they got going on, so to speak. If you want to put it in wrestling terms, if you want to do it like that, the feud, the rivalry, they're just the promo, so to speak, as it were.
It's just, it takes longer in UFC than it does in the wrestling world.
Yeah, I mean, these two guys, they hate each other, and that's part of the reason why people are invested in this fight, why it's such a highly anticipated fight, because of this build-up with the press conferences, McGregor showing up late, Diaz answering his questions and leaving, McGregor throwing the bottle. And then, of course, at the weigh-in, they're both getting each other's faces. Dana White's in between them, trying to separate them as much as he can.
They actually had a good amount of police up there as well, holding both of them back from punching each other. And McGregor actually said in a interview that Diaz should have knocked him out when he had the chance because he was going to beat him, and he did, but as you said, it's promotional stuff. It's, you got to promote. You got to, that's what we try to do in here, but, nothing seems to work really. But I think a third fight will happen to, wrap this up. I think we've been talking about it enough.
Yeah. All right, we're going to move on now. I didn't mention this during the introduction little title or whatever. The introduction.
Yeah, the intro.
The intro, so to speak. But the Olympics, we are supposed to be talking about the Olympics. It did wrap up here from Rio de Janeiro. And Luke over here has the final medal counts for each country. Of course, the USA won. They were dominating the medal count the whole time. But Luke has the official numbers for us.
I'm gonna give you guys the top 5 medal counts. The U.S. finished with 121 total. Great Britain finished with 67 total. China finished with 70 total. Russia finished with 56 total, and Germany finished with 42 total medals. Now, I said Great Britain came in second with 67 total medals, and China came in third with 70. Great Britain finished in second because they had 27 gold medals, and China only had 26 gold medals. So that's why they finished one spot above them. Also, this past weekend, as the Olympics wrapped up, both the U.S. men's and women's basketball teams won gold for the USA. It is Coach K's last hurrah in the Olympics, I guess you could say. Greg Popovich, the current head coach of the San Antonio Spurs, is going to be taking over here shortly and will be the head coach in 2020 in Tokyo. And also for, the other basketball games that they'll play around the world, and then in between the next 4 years, say like the FIBA games and whatnot. Everybody should know what I'm talking about if you're a true basketball fan. But yeah, as you said, the Olympics wrapped up. They're over now. Tokyo is going to be coming up in 4 years for the Summer Games. 2 years for the Winter Games, though. They will be in South Korea. And then in 2022, they're going back to Beijing for the Winter Games again. Well, I shouldn't say Winter Games again. The Summer Olympics were there in 2008. But the next three Olympics are going to be over in Asia. It's going to be interesting to see how, their culture, I shouldn't say affects the world, but we'll see. It's going to be interesting. And really, that's pretty much it. I was just going to give you the medal count. I'm just bullshitting now, but
no, that's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you for giving the medal count. A little bit about the men's and women's basketball team there. Of course, the women's team won 6 straight golds now.
Yes.
Haven't lost really in forever at the Olympics. It seems like men's too for the most part as well. They just have one loss in however many years or how many Olympics I should say for the most part. This is their third now? Third straight?
Third straight. I think, the last time they lost, I think, was in 2004 in Athens.
To Argentina.
To Argentina, who they beat last week, end of last week.
So, yeah, it's been 12 years or so since they actually lost in the Olympics. Or they didn't lose the Olympics, but they haven't lost gold or anything. They haven't gotten anything less than gold. Third from Carmelo Anthony, who's third straight at the big games.
Who is retiring from
Olympic competition.
Olympic competition. He's still playing the NBA. We'll have to see how much longer he does play in the NBA.
Yes.
Him, LeBron, who decided not to play in the Olympics this year, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, all the main stars in the NBA right now. They're getting up there in age and, going to be retiring here soon. And, as I've said before, basketball, baseball, football, hockey even now. It's all the young guys. It's a new revolution, I guess you could say. So it's going to be fun to see what happens.
Talking about guys being done with Olympic competition, Usain Bolt, who completed his triple, winning the 100, 200, and 4x100 meter relays on the track. I think it was last week we talked about just the 100 meters, I think it was. But he won the 200 and 4x100 meter relay. 9 gold medals, undefeated in Olympic finals. His last loss in any final in any of those events was I think it was just 2015 World Championships because of a DQ on the start. That's it. So he's been the most dominant racer in the world.
The man's faster than a cheetah, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
A cheetah.
And no one has been able
Not Tom Brady, but a cheetah.
Oh. Yes. Luke with the pun there. But, if you didn't pick up on that, play it back. Maybe you'll get it. But when we come back, we're going to go dive into some fantasy football, and we'll tell you more about how we're going to do that right after this.
Do you like what you hear? If so, you need to check out Silence Our Perdition, a metal band from Clearfield, Pennsylvania. They're fairly new in the music industry, but they're on the rise. Some songs include Slaves to Obedience, Never, Six, Left and Solace, and An Untold Story. Be sure to like Silence Our Perdition on Facebook and follow @SO Perdition on Twitter. You can contact them on either Facebook or Twitter. Do you like hunting, fishing, or talking about the outdoors? If so, you need to check out Downriver Outdoors, an outdoors channel on YouTube that brings you some of the best footage of hunting and fishing from the backwoods of Central PA. They also tell some great outdoors stories. Be sure to subscribe to Downriver Outdoors on YouTube.
All right, we are back, and we're going to go into what we're going to call our fantasy football preview. Not really much of a preview, more of a highlighting of the certain players that you might want to pick for your own team. And how we're going to do that is we're going to pick, quote-unquote, our own teams, but these are going to be featuring all of the best players available for the most part, because we're going to do this. Luke and I are going to each get 2 quarterbacks 3 running backs, 3 wideouts, 2 tight ends, a kicker, and 1 or 2 defenses. We haven't really decided yet. It's 2. I guess we'll go 2.
Go 2. 2's fine.
Just to cover the bases, which is why we're doing 2 of each or 3 for the running backs and wideouts, trying to cover more players, not just 1 or 2 players as a full team. Because typically a team's like 1 of the quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wideouts, and such.
Yeah, because it's only because it's only the 2 of us. We don't have 10 or other 12.
Yeah, so we can't
10 or
go
12
through
other people here to go through everything. So
yeah, so we're gonna go through this. We did a coin toss off audio, so I won. I get the first pick.
Of course you did.
Yeah, we're just gonna go through, and we're gonna go through each position rather than like a draft. You can pick whoever you want. We're just gonna go through each position. So we're gonna start with quarterback, of course. For my pick, I'm gonna go Aaron Rodgers. He is one of the top quarterbacks every year in fantasy football. One year he was the best. And if he's going to keep doing it, he has big weapon Jordy Nelson back, which I might get into more when we get to wideouts, because of course he will be large and in charge in Green Bay as the top wide receiver there for Aaron Rodgers. But he also adds a little bit of a dynamic sometimes. He can run the ball when he needs to. That adds a little bit of value to Aaron Rodgers, but he doesn't turn the ball over a lot, so you're not going to lose points for turnovers. He's going to throw 30, 40 touchdowns a season, only have maybe 7, not even double-digit interceptions. So he's going to obviously score huge. So that's why I'm going to go with Aaron Rodgers.
As long as he stays healthy, he's good. For my first pick at quarterback, I'm going to take your quarterback, Drew Brees, from your New Orleans Saints. Mark Ingram coming out of the backfield, good weapon to throw some screens to. Marquise Colston's that wide receiver, has a new wide receiver out of Ohio State, Michael Thomas. Tight end Colby Fleener coming from Indianapolis. Andrew Luck's losing his college tight end. He's coming down to New Orleans now to replace Jimmy Graham, who they traded away a year ago. They really didn't have a tight end last year. I mean, yeah, they did have Ben Watson, but he really didn't live up to Jimmy Graham standards. But Drew Brees, he always throws for at least 4,500 yards in a season. We'll have to see if he, gets that mark again. But Drew Brees always puts up good numbers, and that's why I'm taking him with my first pick in the fantasy draft right now.
All right. Keeping the quarterbacks, of course. My second quarterback, I'm picking from a pure fantasy football perspective, it's Cam Newton. And I don't typically like Cam Newton. Of course, he's in the rival team in my division. On the actual NFL wise, but in a fantasy league, I'm okay with taking Cam Newton because he has that running factor that I talked a little bit about Aaron Rodgers. He does it to a whole different level. I mean, in fantasy, running normally gets you more points. Like, it's a lot easier to score on the ground than it is through the air because typically, in most leagues at least, you get more points per yard, basically. It's normally like 10 yards for a point in like most standard leagues, especially on ESPN or something. And it's like 25 or so for a quarterback to get a point through the air. So it's easier to score points, plus touchdowns are typically worth more running the ball. In Cam Newton, you could look at a guy like Russell Wilson, another guy who runs the ball a lot as a quarterback. But the thing is, Cam Newton is more reliable on the ground at least because he is larger. He is able to plow through more guys. He's able to score more touchdowns, which is key at any point in fantasy football. Touchdowns mean more than anything really in fantasy football, especially in some leagues where touchdowns really are everything.
Talking about big guys, I'm going to take my quarterback, Ben Roethlisberger, Big Ben Roethlisberger, from the Pittsburgh Steelers. 2-time Super Bowl champ. Big guy, as I said, he can throw the ball more than he runs it, but if he needs to run, he will. He does get sacked a lot. The offensive line in Pittsburgh has gotten better over the past couple of seasons. They also have Le'Veon Bell, who I think one of us will take as a running back here shortly.
Probably.
In his backfield, throw some screens too. And then he has Antonio Brown, probably the top fantasy player overall. Obviously the top wide receiver overall, to throw to. And then he has Marcus Sweet. Yeah, he's losing Martavis Bryant due to suspension for this season. But I think Big Ben Roethlisberger will have a good fantasy season this year.
All right. I mean, I did say 2 each, but maybe you want to add anybody that maybe like a sleeper pick, so to speak, or like a late round draft pick, possibly.
A sleeper pick. Let's see here. Let me go through my list.
A sleeper, or maybe like a later round one they could pick up and he can maybe start as your quarterback in fantasy. Like maybe you go after running backs or wideouts first, and then you try to get a quarterback later on. Maybe this guy.
In my leagues, I try to go 2 running backs to start. I don't try to get a quarterback unless, say, it's the top quarterback until later, middle round. But I'd have to go with Derek Carr to answer your question. Oakland has tons of weapons for him to throw to. Amari Cooper, Michael Crabtree. Latavius Murray as their running back, and then their defense is stout too. So he can be off the field for a good amount of time and get rested up while their defense is out there, making stops and whatnot. But yeah, Derek Carr I think would be a good sleeper pick if you needed to get a quarterback late and then possibly start him week 1.
Yeah. I look at mine, and he's the name that jumps off of the page. Also, like a Blake Bortles, maybe might drop in the draft, possibly.
Yeah.
He does play for Jacksonville, which is a reason why you don't want to pick a Jacksonville Jaguar player. But they are on the uprise. They got a bunch of talent now.
I picked both them and the Raiders to make the playoffs this year a couple weeks ago in our football preview.
He has a lot of weapons.
Go listen to it.
I would say him. Another guy that could fall in this draft because of suspension, Tom Brady. Tom Brady could fall a little bit due to that 4-game suspension. But the thing is, after that 4-game suspension, you can pretty much guarantee he's going to be lights out probably. Because he's going to come back and he's going to be playing angry, if you ask me. And an angry Tom Brady is a dangerous Tom Brady on the football field.
Unfortunately.
Just look what he did last year after the suspension got overturned. He was playing angry and he just went on a roll for the entire season.
Unfortunately, yeah. I mean, as I said earlier, he's a Cheeto.
He is a very reliable fantasy quarterback, and if you can just get him maybe later in the rounds, then you just need a guy for 4 weeks or so. But after that, because he does come after his bye week, I do believe, right? His suspension ends after a bye week, if I'm not mistaken.
No, New England's bye week this year is week 9.
Oh, it's week 9.
Yeah, last year that's what it was.
Oh, okay.
Because he had the 4-game suspension, but then it obviously got overturned, and he didn't have the suspension at all. It's just a year later now. But yeah, that would have been last year.
But
he would have came back. I know what you're saying.
But still, you pick a guy like like a late round guy like Ryan Fitzpatrick or Matt Ryan, someone like that can just play for 4 games and then that bye week maybe, and then you got Tom Brady the rest of the year, and he can lead you. And it all really matters is when you get to the playoffs, of course. And I mean, towards the end of the season, Tom Brady might not play because the team's already in or not. But
yeah, I mean, it just depends on how many teams are in your league, what your setup is. I mean, we're doing 2 quarterbacks, 3 pretty much. We're doing a sleeper pick. But these aren't actually going to be our fantasy teams for this year. We're just
kind of previewing.
We're just previewing stuff, and if you want some expert inside edition, just listen to this podcast. I'd have to agree with Bortles, though, too. If Derek Carr wasn't there, I'd take Blake Bortles. I took him this year in my fantasy draft. I took him early because 2 guys, 2 of my good friends, they took 2 guys I really wanted, 2 picks in a row right before me. I was looking at a tight end, Greg Olsen from Carolina. I was looking at a wide receiver, Jeremy Maclin from Kansas City. And both those guys went off the board, so I took Bortles. As you said, he has good weapons down in Jacksonville. Allen Robinson from Penn State, Alan Hearns, Julius Thomas, the tight end. They also have Marquise Lee, a wide receiver out of USC a couple years ago. Same draft class as Allen Robinson. And they also have 3 running backs in the backfield, too, if he needs to throw some screens. And then if he needs to, hand the ball off to them as well, he can do that. And those 3 running backs... they just signed Chris Ivory from the New York Jets, played for your Saints a couple years ago, Corey. They also have T.J. Yeldon, and then Denard Robinson, a former quarterback up at the University of Michigan, turned running back in the National Football League.
Yeah, so Bortles is a definite up-and-up type of fantasy quarterback. It's just depending on where you want to take that risk, because there's a possible risk with him. I mean, this is Jacksonville Jaguars after all.
Yeah, and, as you said, they are on the uprising. He does get sacked a lot, though. I think he was the second most sacked quarterback last year. He reminds me a lot of Ben Roethlisberger. He's got the, size, same amount of size. He's about 6'5", 230, 235. Throws a lot of touchdowns, and, that was a comparison when he was coming out of Central Florida a couple years back. But, Bortles would be another quarterback I'd take.
All right, let's get to the running backs now. We're going to take 3 apiece. You picked last, right? You picked Roethlisberger, yes.
Yeah.
So I'll get it started. I'm going to go with the tried and true Adrian Peterson with my top running back. He's just been consistent every year. The Minnesota Vikings are a very run-heavy team, and that has to do with Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback. He's not exactly a stellar quarterback. Also, he doesn't really have any weapons to throw to. Teddy Bridgewater does. They just got Laquan Treadwell in the draft, and now he's basically their number 1 receiver. So that just says what their receiving core is. Depth-wise, it's not very good.
Yeah, Minnesota really hasn't had a good wide receiver since Randy Moss was playing up in Minneapolis, if you ask me.
You're talking maybe you're in a PPR league. Adrian Peterson's going to get a whole lot of touches.
Yeah, he will.
And he's consistently putting 1,000-yard seasons in. And, of course, he's not really a threat out of the backfield, so to speak, but he can at times get a few catches here and there to add to that. And he's just been one of the best running backs. That's why he's perennially one of the top picks in fantasy drafts. So
every single year.
Ever
since he's been a rookie in 2007.
Yeah, so that's why I'm going to go Adrian Peterson.
You're going to go Adrian Peterson. I'm going to go Todd Gurley. I took Todd Gurley in my draft a couple weeks back. Rams running back. Yeah, he came off a ACL injury in his rookie year last year coming out of Georgia. And then the Rams moving to LA now. He's pretty much the face of the franchise other than Jared Goff, who was the number 1 overall pick a couple months ago. I look to see the Rams giving him a bunch of carries, and a lot of people compare him to Adrian Peterson, so maybe after Peterson retires, he's the new guy you want to take, year in and year out.
Yeah, I'll talk about Todd Gurley. He is a workforce back. He is a 3-down back type of guy. He will carry the load for you offensively in the running back position. With Jared Goff, with their quarterback, a rookie quarterback, help him get acclimated to the system.
You got to run the ball.
You got to run the ball a lot. That's how they do it, pretty much. And you got a good running back in Todd Gurley. You're just going to keep handing it off to him because he showed it last year. He's a fantastic runner. He came in partway through the season. He was injured for the first couple games and actually put on a show for those first couple games that he played, and it continued throughout the rest of the year. So Todd Gurley definitely a top pick. We mentioned him already, Le'Veon Bell. I'll go Le'Veon Bell because despite the 3-game suspension, which is now a 3-game suspension, it actually ups his value because it's only 3 games instead of 4.
Yeah.
Another guy coming off suspension, much like Tom Brady, but once you get him back, he's going to be dominant for us, especially PPR. I'll mention it here a couple of times. PPR league, he does both receiving and rushing very proficiently. And with that Steelers offense, high-powered offense, he will be targeted in the offense on the passing game more so without Martavis Bryant, as you alluded to when talking about Big Ben.
Yep.
But he is a star running back for them. He's a guy that can go over, 2,000 yards, all-purpose yards, receiving and running the ball. He's a guy that can do something like that.
Yeah. All right. My next pick, I'm going to take newly signed running back in Houston, Lamar Miller, coming from Miami. Houston loves to run the football. Bill O'Brien loves to run the football, especially. I'm a big believer. I loved him when he was at Penn State up here in Happy Valley, and then he left, but he left for the right reasons. As I said, Houston loves to run the ball because of O'Brien. Newly signed quarterback as well, Brock Osweiler, Brocky Mountain Way from Denver. Get him acclimated to the system. They're going to run the ball a lot. They also have Alfred Blue. They cut Arian Foster so they could go out and get Lamar Miller. And then they also have DeAndre Hopkins and then Will Fuller and Jalen Strong to throw to. Tight end position, they really don't have a good tight end. They really never have since they came into the league in 2002. Yeah, Lamar Miller, I think he'll get a bunch of carries this year, and hopefully do well for the Houston Texans.
All right, the final running back I'm going to go with Mark Ingram, Saints. Mark Ingram is a guy that's maybe not so much going to be a superstar runner, getting yardage-wise, but he will score touchdowns because the Saints have a newer philosophy now of running the ball in the red zone, thanks to Jimmy Graham's departure, getting traded to Seattle. Back when he was on the team, they would throw a lot in the red zone because they had Jimmy Graham there. They could just throw it up into the corner and have him go get it, which is why he was such a big star in New Orleans. He got so many touchdowns in the red zone from Drew Brees. But Mark Ingram, he'll get a lot of touches in the red zone, goal line situations like he did last year. He also proved that he can run the ball elsewhere or otherwise. They don't really have much of a backup. They have C.J. Spiller. He comes in for passing down situations for the most part. Other than that, he is the top guy in New Orleans. So I wouldn't be frustrated at all if I was had to pick Mark Ingram. I don't normally pick Saints running backs. I'm normally pretty low on Saints running backs because they've had so many over the years.
Deuce Staley.
Deuce Staley never played for...
No, okay, that was my bad.
He didn't play for...
Yeah, I'm thinking of somebody else.
Deuce McAllister.
Yeah, Deuce McAllister. Why did I say Deuce Staley? Deuce Staley played for the Eagles and the Steelers. I meant Deuce McAllister.
Yeah. So they haven't really had a number one guy since pretty much Deuce McAllister. They've had multiple running backs in the system before. They had one when they were getting good when Drew Brees came in. They had Reggie Bush and Pierre Thomas. They were kind of splitting the load. And now they got Mark Ingram in. He was splitting with Pierre Thomas. And then last year with C.J. Spiller and Pierre Thomas and all these other guys, Kyrie Robinson and such.
Chris Ivory was down there too.
Chris Ivory was there for a little bit. I was upset when they lost him. I thought he would have been a great player to keep in the system. But Mark Ingram, he was a former Heisman winner. They took him 20-something overall, or exactly 20 in the draft that he came out.
It was in the 20s. It was late in the first round. I know that. They traded up to get him.
He wasn't that great first couple years, but now he's coming to his own. He's the top guy there now. And I think the touchdown factor, he'll score a lot of touchdowns, I think, for the Saints.
Okay. That was my bad a second ago. I'm sorry about that. It's Deuce McAllister, not Deuce Staley. My next pick, I'm going to take another newly signed. He was traded to this team during the offseason, and that's DeMarco Murray. Yeah, you might think I'm jumping up at him, taking him a little too early because there's a bunch of other guys still on the board. But if you had to, jump up and get somebody for a running back, I would take DeMarco Murray. You saw what he did in Dallas with the Cowboys. The offensive line was fantastic. I had him a couple years ago in the Fantasy Football League. I won my Fantasy Football League because of him. I also had Andrew Luck that year, the year he was phenomenal last year. So it had been 2 years ago. And then last year he was hurt. But as I said, Murray coming into Tennessee from Philly really didn't do anything with the Eagles, but you saw what he did with Dallas and the Cowboys. He goes to Philly and Chip Kelly pretty much screws them. I guess you could say Chip Kelly's no longer in Philly. He's out in San Francisco now. I pray to God they don't do anything wrong to Carlos Hyde. He's another good running back, but we'll have to see about that. But yeah, DeMarco Murray, he even did well in the first preseason game he played in a couple weeks ago for the Titans. Had close to 50 yards, but he's a starter, so he's not going to play a lot in the preseason. But look to see DeMarco Murray get a lot of carries and get a lot of touchdowns because he's another 3-down back. They also have Derrick Henry though, and that a lot of people compare him to Eddie George, a former Tennessee Titan running back who won the Heisman Trophy at Ohio State. Derrick Henry also won the Heisman Trophy at Alabama, and then they also have Marcus Mariota, their quarterback, who won the Heisman Trophy at Oregon 2 years ago. So the Tennessee Titans have the past two Heisman Trophy winners. Another stat for you. So Murray, I think Murray will be my third running back.
All right. We'll go right into the wideouts now, I guess. I'm going to save what should be the number one pick for wideouts no matter what for Luke because I am sure he wants to talk about this guy. But I'll go Julio Jones.
You don't have to. I mean, you can take him if you want to.
I don't want to.
All right.
I'll take Julio Jones. I'm happy with Julio Jones. He is one of the best wideouts in the league, which is why he's ranked so highly. He is the top wideout in Atlanta. He's been the target for Matt Ryan for a while now, since basically breaking in. Maybe after his rookie year, Roddy White was still kind of relevant when he first came in. And also had Harry Douglas, who was actually on a roll for a little bit at one point. But Julio Jones last year really stepped it up.
He's not in Atlanta anymore, Harry Douglas.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah.
He stepped it up last year, had about 200 catches or so, one of the best. Perennially gets over like 100 yards a game, maybe like 10 catches a game even. He gets so many targets that he'll be good in a PPR league even because of all these receptions that he's going to get. Just like Antonio Brown, who I've basically given to you as a gift.
You didn't have to, like I said.
I don't need Antonio Brown to beat you, but in my team. But Julio Jones definitely top wideout for me.
All right, as Corey said, I'm going to take Antonio Brown. He pretty much gave him to me. He's been in Pittsburgh for almost 6 seasons now. He was a 6th-round draft pick out of Central Michigan. He walked on at Central Michigan. He came into Central Michigan the same time J.J. Watt did. J.J. Watt decided to transfer. He transferred to Wisconsin. Everybody knows what he's doing down in Houston now. One of the top defensive players in the National Football League at the moment. But yeah, Antonio Brown, Pittsburgh wide receiver, the main guy in Pittsburgh, pretty much took over for Santonio Holmes after they released him, and pretty much took over for Hines Ward as well after he retired a couple of seasons ago. Pittsburgh's had some good receivers in the past years. I'm not going to get into them, but Antonio Brown can pretty much do it all. He can return kicks for you, can return punts for you. He can run the ball if you wanted him to. He could probably play all 11 positions if you needed him to on the offense or defense. Pittsburgh does need some secondary help. He could probably play corner or safety because he can catch the ball. They didn't have a lot of interceptions last year, so maybe if you put him back on the secondary, he could do that for you as well. Get some fantasy points for you there too. But as I said, Antonio Brown does it all for Pittsburgh. Turns kicks, catches the ball. He could probably even play quarterback if all 3 quarterbacks get injured. Hopefully not. Knock on wood. Because if Ben Roethlisberger gets hurt, Pittsburgh's probably not going to make the playoffs if he's out for a number of weeks because Landry Jones absolutely sucks. I'm a Steelers fan and he's a backup quarterback for him, but he absolutely sucks. I hope they don't re-sign him after this year, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do. Going back to Antonio Brown, he does it all, like I said. Number one fantasy player. So you pretty much gave him to me, and I thank you for that. And who's your next pick, Corey?
I'm going to go Allen Robinson from the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Of course you are, Penn Stater.
I'm going to go Allen Robinson for mainly one reason. It's basically he has that big playability. He's a guy, especially last year, had a bunch of 50-plus yard touchdowns. In some leagues, you get extra points for that. You get double the points in some leagues for over 50-yard touchdowns. He was the top target for Blake Bortles last year. It'll probably continue mostly this year, although the downside is he might get a little bit more attention from corners and safeties on defenses, which is the one thing you can knock against him. But otherwise, he is the top wideout in Jacksonville. He has that big playability. He'll be able to give you lots of fantasy points week in, week out, you can hope.
Okay. I'm going to take another Houston Texan. I'm going to take DeAndre Hopkins. Number 1 guy in Houston. Yeah, they have Will Fuller now coming out of Notre Dame. Fun story about Will Fuller. He's from Philadelphia. Originally committed to Penn State when Bill O'Brien was the head coach there in his first season in 2012. But then the sanctions hit Penn State pretty hard, and they didn't have any scholarships left. But before that, Will Fuller decided to decommit and then committed to Notre Dame. Bill O'Brien still gets Will Fuller. He's been doing a fantastic job in the preseason so far for Houston. So he's their number 2 guy, but their number 1 guy, as I said, is DeAndre Hopkins. He had a fantastic season last year because he was their only wide receiver pretty much. Even though they did play 4 different quarterbacks this year, they have one. His name is Brock Osweiler, as I said a little bit ago when I selected Lamar Miller, their running back. But if they, decide to rest Osweiler if he gets hurt or if he's not playing well, as I said, they played 4 quarterbacks last year. They still have 2 of the, 4 currently on the roster, and that's Braden Whedon and Tom Savage. So Hopkins is still going to be getting catches if that happens. I don't see it happening, but if it does, he'll still get catches. He's a good deep threat, compared to Allen Robinson there, and he'll score a lot of touchdowns. They really haven't tried him out at returning kicks or punts or anything like that, but he really doesn't need to do that. They really don't want to risk him getting hurt, and they have other guys to do that for them. So Hopkins, Houston Texan wide receiver. Try not to pick anybody with the same bye week. Antonio Brown has week 8 bye week, and then Hopkins has week 9. So last wide receiver, Corey?
My last wide receiver is going to be...
Let me guess. Jordy Nelson.
No, Brandon Marshall.
Okay.
Brandon Marshall for the New York Jets. He had a great season last year with that dynamic duo of him and Eric Decker.
Yep.
Eric Decker helps Brandon Marshall actually in a sense that it takes a lot... you need to focus on Eric Decker as well as Brandon Marshall. It's not a situation where you can double up on Brandon Marshall and then Eric Decker gets all the catches or something. You need to focus on both of these guys. You're talking a guy like maybe like Odell Beckham Jr. He's a top wideout pick. You might take him next. I don't know. But
no.
He's a guy that gets a lot of attention because he is the star wideout for a team. You're going to get double coverage. A guy like Des Bryant as well, who just got concussed at practice, so he's going to be out for a little bit. But Brandon Marshall, he's another perennial guy that gets lots of catches, lots of yards, very solid each year in and year out. So I think that'll continue again this year. I'm high on the Jets this year anyway. So
I am as well. You should know why.
He's a big reason why I am. Him and Eric Decker. So I'll go with the top one of those two. That's Brandon Marshall.
Okay. As you said, you're high on the Jets. I said I am too, obviously, because Christian Hackenberg's playing up in New York now. But the Jets, they have a lot of weapons. Matt Forte at running back. Fitzpatrick, Magic at quarterback. Marshall and Decker at wide receiver. Who's their tight end?
Their tight end
is what's his name? From Texas Tech, Jason Morrow. That's Jason Morrow, their tight end. I lost my train of thought there for a second on who their tight end was. But anyways, I'm high in the Jets as well. They might make the playoffs. I think I did pick them to make the playoffs a couple weeks ago. My next pick, though, I'm going to take Amari Cooper. They do have Michael Crabtree, but Cooper is their number 1. And as I said, Derek Carr would be like a sleeper pick at quarterback. The Raiders are loaded with weapons as well, so a lot of these guys are going to be getting maybe the same amount of receptions or the same amount of carries. They're going to be evened out, but Cooper's still he's going to be I'm looking at my list. He's the number 12 receiver, but he's going to be in the top 5 by either next year or the year after that, I think, because I think Oakland's going to do some fantastic work with him. He's going to do a phenomenal job, and don't be surprised if Amari Cooper's the number 1 receiver next year.
All right. It wraps up the wideouts. Tight ends now. I'm going to take the layup with my pick, Rob Gronkowski. Obviously, it's Gronk. He's best tight end in the league for sure, no doubt about it. Such a huge target in the red zone and elsewhere. He can be a possession receiver, go short, or he can go deep. He's actually a deep threat as a tight end for the most part because he's able to go up and get that ball. They added Martellus Bennett as a tight end in New England. That'll help deter away from the attention of Gronk. I've been saying that a couple of times about some guys. the attention diversion from having another kind of a big name on the team. But Gronk, he's always going to get he's always going to get his stats and whatnot pretty much every week. It's hard to miss him. It's hard to not get the ball to him. And then we'll get Tom Brady back after a little bit, only make him better.
All right, well said. I agree with all that. He's also on the cover of Mad 17, which came out the other day. Greg Olsen, I'm finally going to be able to take him. As I said in my draft a couple weeks ago, I wanted to take him, but he was picked 2 picks before I picked my next player. But I'm going to take Greg Olsen right now, Carolina tight end. He opens up the middle of the field, for the Carolina Panthers, as any tight end does. And they really don't have a wide receiver, I don't think, other than Kelvin Benjamin, who is coming off an ACL injury. We'll have to see how he plays out. They have Ted Ginn and Corey Philly Brown from Ohio State. 2 Ohio State wide receivers there. And then they have Jonathan Stewart running back. So I really don't like how the Carolina Panthers, are formed. You picked Cam Newton earlier.
Yes.
I didn't want to take him because of this reason. They just have, so many guys, and they're all average. They're not big name, superstars.
Well, that's not why I picked Cam Newton.
But, this is why I'm saying I didn't. But I think Greg Olsen is the face of that franchise, not Cam Newton. And Greg Olsen's been around. He played for the Bears for a while. He was drafted by the Bears out of Miami back in 2006, I believe it was. And he's pretty much their main threat to any defense. Other than Kelvin Benjamin, who I said is coming off an injury. So we'll have to see how he plays this year.
All right, my second tight end is going to be the first player I'm going to pick from a team that I've already picked from, and that's Julius Thomas, Jacksonville Jaguars. He is another guy on that team that is a big weapon now, and that makes their offense very volatile and able to do things that are very well. It's just their defense that's going to be the problem for them this coming season, whether they can hold up and hold their opponents to low enough scores so that their offense can outscore them. But Julius Thomas is another guy where I'm thinking in terms of he's not going to get so much attention. Like last year, he was injured for a little bit, but he had a lot of tension on him because he was coming in from Denver. He had a career year in Denver the year prior coming into Jacksonville, so he had a lot of attention on him. But the upcoming of Allen Robinson and Allen Hurns, those 2 guys are going to just move defenses off of Thomas a little bit, and that'll help him get more open air in the field, able to have Blake Bortles find him, and he'll have a pretty big season, I think, for Jacksonville.
All right, my next tight end, I'm going to take Zach Ertz from Philadelphia. First-year head coach Doug Peterson in Philly this year. He did play for the Eagles during his career. He was a quarterback. And he's coming from Kansas City. He's an Andy Reid type of guy. He coached in Philly when Reid was still there. And now when he was in Kansas City, who was their tight end? Travis Kelce, a main tight end for fantasy football. And Zach Ertz, he's had his ups and downs, mainly because of Chip Kelly, but he's still a number 1, number 2 tight end in some leagues. It just depends. So I'm going to have to take Zach Ertz. I think Doug Peterson will do some great things with him in Philly and his return to Philly.
All right, final positional player we're going to take. Just the one kicker, just one that we have to pick from all of the other kickers. I'm going to go Justin Tucker from Baltimore. He is a reliable kicker, and he is a franchise-level kicker. I mean, they gave him the franchise tag for crying out loud. They didn't want to lose him, so he obviously is a pretty good kicker. Very accurate, but a big reason why Justin Tucker, he's able to kick very long field goals as well, 50-plus yarders, which obviously give you more points in fantasy football. So he kicks a lot of those with a Baltimore Ravens offense that's not exactly high-powered. They might be kicking a lot of field goals. He'll get a lot of opportunities to make field goals, put up big points for you week in and week out at the kicker position.
Okay. I said that was a mixture of okay and all right. I would take Steven Gostkowski. I would. But with just because, with a suspension of Tom Brady, but he'll be coming back. I am going to take Brandon McManus, Denver's kicker. They're losing Peyton Manning. Their quarterback situation's up in the air right now. They have Mark Sanchez, newly drafted quarterback Paxton Lynch out of Memphis, and then Trevor Siemian from Northwestern. He's been on the team for the past 2-3 seasons now. But, they're all average. They're not a superstar. So they might get into field goal range, and then, it'll be third down. They don't convert. Fourth down, you kick field goal. McManus, he can kick it from 55, 60 yards out if you need him to. So he'll get you at least 5 or 6 points there for a kick, depending on how your league settings are. But I'm going to have to take Brandon McManus as my kicker.
All right. Final couple picks here are going to be on the defensive side. We're going to pick our defenses, I guess, slash special teams, you could say, because that's typically how it is. I'm going to go with my first one, Houston Texans, actually. Okay. I'm going to take the Houston Texans. They are a team that are going to get a lot of sacks. J.J. Watt, of course, being on the team, he's a 20-sack-a-year type of guy. He can get up to that level. So just him alone, you're getting so many sacks. Sacks are a big part of it. He also causes a lot of turnovers himself, forced fumbles, and the like. But I like the Houston Texans. They were a big reason why I won one of my fantasy leagues last year. They came into their own late in the season, got a lot of turnovers, a lot of sacks.
The reason why they made the playoffs late, too.
Yes.
The reason why they won the AFC South.
Yes, because they had a new quarterback to carry them offensively. So Houston Texans for sure for me.
Defense wins championships, no doubt about it. I'm going to have to take the Arizona Cardinals defense and special teams. Really like what Bruce Arians is doing in Arizona and Glendale there. Yeah, he's an offensive-minded coach, but he knows, as I said, defense wins championships. So he won one in Pittsburgh, Super Bowl 43, as the offensive coordinator there. But I think Arizona has what it needs to possibly go to the Super Bowl this year. Again, for the first time in almost 10 seasons. They have Patrick Peterson. They have Tyrann Mathieu. To lead. They say the secondary is like the quarterback of the defense, other than the Mike linebacker. So with both those guys, two highly touted superstars, players in the National Football League, I think Arizona's defense would be a good top pick for a defense if you want to take a defense early, or if you want to wait. Obviously you're going to not get them. You'll get somebody else, but.
Yeah, we did decide to do two defenses, correct?
Yeah, if you want to do two defenses, that's fine. If not, you don't have to.
No, we'll skip another defense. You don't really pick. I know I don't pick more than one defense any time for the fantasy draft.
Neither do I.
The bye week, I pick up another one off the free agency or something.
Exactly.
I just pick the best available one then.
Exactly. So, and if you want to keep the defense you drafted, you drop somebody else, say like a backup running back that you don't need, or a backup wide receiver you don't need, and then you have two defenses for that week. But then, obviously you drop that defense you just picked up the week after that, and then you have your defense that you've had all season. Yeah, and it's like that for pretty much any position, but defense in general.
Defenses and kickers are like that.
Defenses and kickers are like that. Yeah,
very interchangeable. I mean, you can have a new kicker each week if you want.
But some leagues there are transaction limits.
Yes.
So just depends how your league is set up. And speaking of fantasy football, we were thinking about doing a fantasy football league, but we thought it'd just be easier to do a fantasy football. Well, I shouldn't say fantasy football. It's a pick'em, and I think I've said this before. I've put it out on social media. It's a NFL pick'em and a college football pick'em. Be sure to go join it. It's on Fox Sports. I wanted to do it on Yahoo, but some stuff got screwed up. So be sure to go join those. You can join. It's free. You can join by just checking out our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram pages. The links are in the description. So, be sure to join those. As I said, it's free.
All right. I think that wraps it up for fantasy football.
Yeah.
And we're going to go into our wrestling now.
Good luck to everybody this year for fantasy football. Hopefully your team does well and you win a lot of money.
Yes. All right. And our wrestling action now. We had a couple pay-per-views this weekend. 2 WWE pay-per-views. 2 large ones, of course. These are some of the biggest ones for their respective brands, so to speak. So we had NXT and actual WWE main roster stuff. So NXT Takeover Brooklyn 2, trying to live up to last year's success, and it did. If you watched it, I watched it. I know Luke probably watched it too on the network.
I watched it for sure.
Yes,
You know
6 matches, but they put on a 2.5-hour show. Lots of great matches. We'll get to them right now. The very first match to kick off the show, No Way Jose versus Austin Aries. Austin Aries won this one. It was pretty predictable, I think, the whole time. Austin Aries is going to win this one.
Yep.
A great match to kick off the show because Jose, he got the crowd pumped up with his dancing and getting the fans involved, so to speak. So did Aries because everyone loves Aries pretty much. Surprisingly good in-ring match as well. 2 of them went back and forth pretty well. Austin Aries ended up putting No Way Jose into his submission finisher there to win the match. And then after the match, even more fun stuff happened as Hideo Itami, who he really recently returned to NXT, but he returned here on the pay-per-view, though, to attack Austin Aries and hit the GTS, which, of course, he invented in Japan. He's the inventor of the move, not CM Punk, as many people will try to point out, despite that being false, but Hideo Itami hit the GTS on Aries to end that little match and segment, so to speak. The match after that was...
So obviously it's going to be Aries and
Yes,
Hideo
that is
Itami going at it here
for weeks to come.
For weeks to come in NXT.
Yeah, the next match I had, these aren't in order right now. These are in the same order I had when I predicted them. These aren't in the order that they actually happened. I think it was Ember Moon and Billie Kay was next. The debuting Ember Moon was the second match on.
Yes, I believe
and she won that match, of course. It's her debut match, so naturally she's going to win. As typical, people like bigger name, like it's a bigger name they want to hype up. They're going to win their debut match.
Yeah.
It's not the greatest match ever, but it's what you would expect in a debut. She got her offense in. And her finisher was one of the talking points from that match, that corkscrew stunner thing off the top rope. Everyone seemed to like that. It was a very athletic and very innovative move, I would say, especially for a women's wrestler. So we'll have to see what Ember Moon does going forward. This was just kind of a showcase match, so to speak, much like Andrade Cien almost did at the Dallas against Ty Dillinger. Speaking of him, he was on next, taking on the glorious Bobby Roode. And
Glorious!
What an entrance by Bobby Roode that what was he? He's like elevated above the ring, or not above the ring. He was on the entrance. He had like a lift.
Yeah.
And he was in the air. He came down like from the heavens. Had his robe on, looking just magnificent, looking glorious. Pun intended, of course. But Bobby Roode, of course, won this match, debut match, similar to Ember Moon. You got to win those matches. Good showing from Cien. He had a lot of the cooler spots, I would say, showing to Roode that he isn't a quote-unquote minor leaguer, as Bobby Roode told him in the build-up to this match. I don't like Bobby's finisher because it's just a pump handle bomb, so to speak. They call it the Glorious Bomb. It's not exactly the flashiest move in the book. It's not that great, but everyone loved him. They popped for him when he came out, of course. They sung his intro song the whole way when he was coming down, at least the Glorious, the chorus, so to speak. The Glorious, I will be victorious, whatever. The crowd's into it. I love it. But yeah, Bobby Roode.
Yeah, glorious, I won't give up till I'm victorious.
Yeah, all that. Then getting the fans involved, that's one of the big things that makes NXT so great.
Not victorious, the girl on Nickelodeon. But yeah, it's glorious, I won't give up till I'm victorious is how this song goes.
All right, we'll go to our...
Look it up, it's catchy. You'll sing it all night long.
Yes. Now we're to our first of the three title matches here at NXT Takeover Brooklyn 2. The Revival taking on the team of Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa in the tag team title match. Won by the Revival, as I expected, at least in my predictions video, or the predictions podcast last week. But the best match of the night, honestly. Gargano and Ciampa put on a great match with Dash and Dawson. The crowd was into it the whole time, hoping that Gargano and Ciampa would win. Plenty of false finishes, and then the Revival did a bunch of great heel work to the shenanigans and whatnot to help them retain the titles in the end. Which one was it? I think it was Dash. Dawson put Dash's foot on the rope or something to break up the 3 count. Everyone thought that Gargano and Ciampa won, but no.
I don't even remember.
Yeah.
As I said last week, the tag team division in NXT right now is awful in my opinion. I really didn't even watch that match. I think I went and got something to eat.
You missed the best match of the night then.
Well, no. I thought the best match of the night is going to be one we're talking about here coming up.
No. You didn't watch the match, so I guess that would be why that is your best match, because you didn't watch
I did see the finish of probably the last 10 minutes of that match, but the start of it, I went and got something to eat, I think.
Oh, well. All right. Bayley Asuka 2, the NXT Women's title match, won by Asuka. As I predicted it last week, you wanted Bayley more personal pick.
Yeah,
sure,
but I figured,
think you knew deep down.
Yeah, I knew deep down in my heart that she was going to be coming up to the main roster.
Yeah,
and it's better because we get to see her every week now rather than every other couple weeks on NXT, because NXT programming is only 1 hour a week.
Yeah.
And you can't have the women on each week because they have so many superstars on NXT. So. So we get to see Bayley a lot more now since she lost at NXT Takeover Brooklyn too this past weekend, and she's on the main roster now. So
yeah, I mean, after that match, you could definitely tell it was going to happen because the emotional send off, so to speak, she's going around hugging everyone around the ring.
Yep.
And she leaves so emotionally. So it was pretty obvious that it was going to happen, and then it did happen here on Monday Night Raw. Mick Foley announced that she was coming out. Now she's pretty much the new contender for Charlotte for the women's title now.
Because Sasha's hurt. She will be coming back here within the next month, though. So maybe they have a triple threat at Clash of Champions. Maybe they have a, triple threat at Hell in a Cell or Survivor Series. There's going to be a lot more pay-per-views coming up here, starting with Backlash on September 11th. 9/11. 9/11's always deep in our hearts for what happened on that day, but that's when the new pay-per-view schedule starts. As I said, Backlash from Richmond, Virginia. It's a SmackDown pay-per-view. A couple nights ago on SmackDown, Daniel Bryan and Shane McMahon introduced the new SmackDown Tag Team Championships and the Women's Championship. We'll have to see who they have win those. There's going to be 2 women's champions now and then 2 tag team champions. Bayley's always on Raw, so she's going after the main women's championship, the Raw women's championship. Going back to her, but yeah, I don't know really where I was just rambling.
All right,
talking about what's happened the past couple of nights with new stuff.
Yeah. All right, so it is main event time. Shinsuke Nakamura, Samoa Joe, NXT title match. Shinsuke Nakamura is your new NXT champ. And he wins the title. Second best of the match, best match of the night, in my opinion, at least. Luke, it's yours, obviously.
Yeah.
They both threw everything at each other. Both kicked out of each other's finisher. Great false finishes. Before Nakamura put him away with one final Kinshasa.
That dislocated his jaw.
It was either that or the first one or the other. It did, though, and Joe's hurt now.
Yeah.
He's a tough SOB. He'll be back.
Or else he would be up on the main roster right now, too, I think.
If not, then sooner.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sooner rather than later, he will be anyway.
Yeah.
Either way, because dropping the title, it's kind of one of the, what is it, like evidence, so to speak, or whatever.
Yeah, I guess you could say it's evidence to...
It's like, yeah, we know it's coming soon.
Yeah.
Because you don't have the title anymore. That's typically how it's been. Whenever you drop the title, you're coming up, so...
A lot of injuries as well recently.
A lot of injuries.
We'll get into that.
Yeah, a lot more here as we go into the main show, SummerSlam. But final grade for me, A, for this show. Great wrestling throughout the entire...
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Throughout the entire event.
For sure.
Even in the lower card, the crowd was electric for nearly every match, with the exception of maybe Ember Moon, because of course debuting, you don't really know anything about her.
Yeah.
But otherwise, they were invested in the matches, and that means something to me, at least. It gets me into it more. Even.
Oh, for sure.
The crowd's into it, I'm into it.
It's NXT, former independent stars, maybe some former, TNA stars, as I said, maybe former WWE main roster stars from years ago, down in NXT, but everybody who watches NXT watches every other wrestling promotion as well. So they know who is who, and that's why the crowd gets into it, in my opinion, and that's why it was an A+ show, as you said.
All right, time for SummerSlam now. And the way I have these written down is the way I did predictions, obviously, so they're not in any order whatsoever, and I can't remember the order exactly off the top of my head, so I'm just kind of reading through the way I have them written
That's
down.
fine.
So we'll start with the six-woman tag match. Becky Lynch, Naomi, and Carmella taking on what was supposed to be Eva Marie, Natalya, and Alexa Bliss. Eva Marie gets suspended. She's not in the match anymore, so they bring in Nikki Bella, who's returning. So she returns. It pops the crowd a little bit, you could say, and they win the match because she's returning, obviously. I had the heels winning in this match anyway with Eva, but Nikki wins either way. But then on SmackDown this week, she turned face because Carmella turned heel, basically, because she beat the crap out of Nikki. So now she's a good person, she's a good woman, whatever you want to say, face. I just want to kind of dumb it down, so to speak. Not in wrestle speak, I didn't want to say it that way. So she's a face now. Sheamus Cesaro, first of the best of 7 series, is still on here, despite being on the pre-show, which was I found interesting. I thought the 6-woman tag would be on the pre-show.
They moved it to the pre-show last minute.
They did.
Yeah.
Sheamus won this match, the first of the 7, well, likely 7, and I think it sets up just the eventual comeback and win for Cesaro in the end of this
as we said last week.
full 7-match series. So
as we said last week.
All right, I know this was the very first match on Enzo and Cass versus Jericho and KO.
I wonder why they're in Brooklyn.
Gotta get that crowd pop.
Exactly.
So I know it's obvious why it was on, but Jericho and Owens wins. That's kind of surprising, but not at the same time because they are the heels. It gives them good heat, so to speak. So them being at their hometown, it makes sense in that sense. But it also builds up Enzo and Cass meeting later on, maybe in this feud, which is probably what's going to happen after KO and. They might even play off of it. KO and Kaz are both in the Fatal 4-Way for the Universal title now. We'll get to that a little bit later on the show at the very end here when we get through all this. All right, another tag match, the tag team title match, Gallows and Anderson versus The New Day. And Gallows and Anderson win, but by disqualification because of Big E returns from injury from a few weeks ago, quote-unquote injury. He wasn't actually hurt, probably, just in storyline only.
Well,
but he made his return when Gallows and Anderson threatened to do the same thing that they did to Big E, crotching him on the ring post to Jon Stewart, who was stupidly out there. No one cared that he was out there at all, and it was awkward. Yeah,
again 2 years in a row at SummerSlam.
He tried to be funny.
Don't be surprised if he comes back next year for the 3rd year in a row when NXT Brooklyn and SummerSlam are going to be in Brooklyn again next year.
No one cared about him. They actually just wanted to see. They actually wanted him to get crushed on the ring post by Gallows and Anderson. But they like Big E coming out at the same time. So either way, the New Day are still tag team champions right now, and their feud's going to continue with those two guys. So going forward, maybe Clash of Champions, Gallows and Anderson get those titles. Maybe finally the New Day drop them. They need to at some point. I think they're over now.
They've had it for a year.
It's time.
Yeah, it is time.
They've broken the record for those titles at least. So, all right. Charlotte versus Sasha Banks for the Women's Championship. Charlotte wins this one. A bit of a shock at the time because she just held the belt for a few weeks, Sasha did. But the reasons now, of course, are injuries. She wants to take some time off for those and stuff, as you alluded to earlier. I want to say this match wasn't phenomenal throughout. There's some sloppy points in this match. The corner spot where she does like a sidewalk slam off the top rope that basically nearly killed Sasha. If it went anywhere different.
It looked like she almost broke her neck.
Yeah, and then the Razor's Edge into a Hurricane Rana spot, reminiscent of Eddie Guerrero versus Rey Mysterio on WCW for, I don't know if it was a Cruiserweight Championship match or not, but a very similar spot for that, I know, but she almost hit her head on that too. She was very close. And also a couple of botches here or there. But Charlotte wins because she rolled over the Banks statement into a pinning situation, and Sasha couldn't kick out, playing off storyline. I guess her back was hurting. That was the storyline throughout the match, I guess. She hurt her back on that spot where she almost basically died. So that was kind of the story. But Charlotte wins again. But it sets up Bayley now. She's the contender, you could say, for right now. We'll see how that goes. We already talked about that a little bit. Roman Reigns took on Rusev for the U.S. title, but not really because there wasn't a match. Because Rusev and Reigns, they brawled before the bell even rang. Rusev started beating up Roman before the match even started, and then Reigns took over, absolutely destroyed Rusev after that, to a chorus of boos again, even though he's supposed to be the good guy, but he's still getting booed, even though he's beating up. He's getting booed when he's beating up like the biggest heel in the company almost, you could say. So that's not a good thing for Roman Reigns. No one really wants him to win the U.S. title, and he's not now because he's in that Fatal 4-Way that I already talked about. that we're still going to get to very much later. Also, I want to mention that this was the match before the main event.
Yes.
On this night, so that was an interesting thing after the Universal title match.
Yes,
which kind of is a very interesting booking decision.
Yes, it was.
Which is a reason why the grade I have is why it is. It's you'll get to that at the very end when we're all finished here. I'll get my grade out for that.
Well, are you getting into the Universal title right now?
After I get through these rest of these SmackDown matches.
Okay.
And then, yeah. So Apollo Crews took on The Miz for the Intercontinental title. The Miz won, thankfully, because I don't like Apollo Crews at all. Not a great match, just kind of ended pretty abruptly because there was just a distraction from Maurice, and then Miz hits a skull crushing finale and the match is over. It was a pretty fast match, I would say, for a title match. It could have went longer, I think. It was just a few minutes. It was like something you could, maybe like a SmackDown match even, just like a non-title match. It felt like, it didn't feel like a huge match.
Well, Miz won because he's awesome, and Maurice is hot as hell, just like Carmella. You know. And then I got the honor to have my pizza delivered by The Miz from Domino's the other night. I don't know if you saw that, Corey. Miz is doing a Domino's commercial now, so just throwing that in there. He actually didn't deliver my pizza, if you didn't get it, but go on. Yeah. I was just throwing it in there because the match pretty much sucked.
Yeah. There's not much to talk about for that match.
Yeah, so that's why
There's a lot to talk about for this match. It is John Cena taking on AJ Styles. Match of the night, for sure. Easily, hands down, AJ Styles wins this match. Match of the night. No other matches even came close to this, I don't think. Both guys put on a phenomenal, pun intended, performance and felt like this was like a passing of the torch to AJ, which is what the story was. I felt it was kind of, especially after Cena took off the Never Give Up armband that he wears all the time.
Yeah, Cena's not going to be on TV probably till right after Backlash.
Also, Styles kicking out of 2 AAs, one of them being off the ropes, which was very shocking that he kicked out of not just one, but another one off the ropes, an avalanche one as it's called. Kind of also passing the torch that he never gives up either. So, and now AJ Styles is in the hunt for the WWE World Championship now for Backlash. He will be. So AJ Styles is on the up and up in the WWE universe. So big things coming for AJ Styles, that's for sure.
He's phenomenal.
And the face that runs the place now.
Got that right.
This is the main event of the evening, but I didn't feel like a main event. Brock Lesnar, Randy Orton. This was the main event. Shockingly, for some, myself included, Brock Lesnar wins. This was the worst match of the night, in my opinion, because it was just a domination by Lesnar. It was basically a glorified squash match. Randy Orton hit 2 RKOs and a DDT. That's it. That's the only offense he got in. A reason why this is so terrible, because it was built so much over a 2-month period.
Yes.
And all we got was nothing. Brock Lesnar dominating Randy Orton. Randy hits a few moves, and that's it. And the finish was kind of underwhelming for a main event. I would have taken this if it was like co-main event or a few matches before the main event, because
Brock said he was probably going to walk out right before SummerSlam, right before his match started, if he wasn't the main event. That's probably why they had it the main event.
Yeah, it's the build was like it's supposed to be a big match. It's going to be a really competitive match, 15 years in the making, and all we got was a squash. And then the impression I get after this match and after the show's over, I feel like it's kind of like subliminal messaging saying that Raw is better than SmackDown. Because the Raw guy dominated the SmackDown guy. He F5'd the SmackDown commissioner, which that's going to be a storyline now, at least it is.
Yeah,
the Royal Rumble, they're saying.
Yeah, they're playing
Shane versus Brock, which is probably going to be a terrible match again, because there's no way. If Randy Orton can't get any offense on Lesnar, how am I supposed to believe that Shane McMahon's going to get any offense in on Brock Lesnar? So, and in a TKO, I didn't mention that, but TKO finish because Lesnar cracked freaking Orton's skull wide open.
And that he just went back to UFC, so they had to relate it to that somehow.
Yeah, but it doesn't make any sense. Everyone was booing because it was terrible. It was just, that's it. That's it. It's TKO, that's it. Match over, SummerSlam's over. We have to go home now after all this. So, not a very good match for a main event for the second biggest pay-per-view of the year. That's for sure. Dean Ambrose, Dolph Ziggler, WWE World Championship match. Dean Ambrose wins as expected. He retains. But the match left something to be desired for me because it could have went longer, I felt. It was only like 10, 12 minutes or so. I think both guys had plenty left in the movesets and whatnot. The finish was a bit awkward, just like Ziggler goes for like an X Factor off the top. They both land on their feet. Dean Ambrose hits a 3D, it's over. Like, it didn't feel like a big match. It didn't feel like the World Championship match. Again, it felt like something that you would see on Raw or SmackDown. A match like that, to me. And it just kind of devalued it to me. Plus, it was on, like, at 9 o'clock halfway through the show.
Yeah.
The world title match is halfway through the show. Another thing, Cena Styles was on within the first hour.
Yeah.
So, you're talking about the match of the night happened 3 hours before the end of the show. Like, so, it doesn't make any sense to me. This also, Finn Balor, Seth Rollins, WWE Universal Championship match. It was not the main event. It was not even the co-main event. This came before Reigns-Rusev, which was a pretty shocking decision. Finn Balor won the match. He wins his new title, which is red. That's all I'll say about it. It's red.
It looks a lot like the women's championship, if you ask me. Except the women's is...
It looks like
it has the white...
it.
No, good
all red
God.
everything. It's all red everything.
Are they going to plan on have her winning it then?
They might as well because it's perfect. One thing I will say, like, I watched a video about the title, and it looked like they took the WWE World Championship and cut out Shinsuke Nakamura's pants and put it over top of it.
I didn't even think anything.
It's a combination of the two. Like, that's what it was, and I laughed at that. But yeah, Finn won. Many thought he was going to win.
Yeah.
Another match. I don't think it was done to the full, so it was pretty good. It worked. It was the closest thing to matching Cena Styles, but nothing could after what they did.
Yeah.
The crowd was deflated pretty much after that because nothing could top that.
Nope.
That was the biggest match of the night, but oh well. I still don't think it made sense to put it on Balor. He's at the face of the company. I already mentioned all of this. He should be the new champion.
Well,
plus it's Balor's third match on the main roster, and he wins a championship. Way too soon, in my opinion. He hasn't lost any matches. He hasn't done anything. He just won 3 matches, and he's the champion now. But he has to relinquish it on Raw on Monday because he injured his shoulder in the match.
I should have said last week I would have been happy with whoever won it because I did say that. But I just didn't say it on here because I like both the guys. I think I said that, though. So, I was happy with Balor winning. I would have been happy with Rollins winning because I picked him. But, it is what it is. As you said, he did get hurt. He tore his rotator cuff. He's going to be out for up to 6 months. I could see him returning possibly at the Royal Rumble if his recovery goes well. Or maybe right after the Royal Rumble, in time for WrestleMania, though. Because, he wouldn't want to miss out on his first WrestleMania on the main roster. Now, going back to the Rusev-Roman Reigns match for the U.S. title, the reason why I think that match never even started was because WWE changed their plans just like that after they found out Balor was injured. And then they figured out, well, tomorrow night on Raw, this is what we're going to do. Fatal 4-Way, as you said, which is going to culminate next week on Monday Night Raw now. That's semifinal matches this past week, excuse me. And Big Cass, Kevin Owens, Roman Reigns, and Seth Rollins are in that Fatal 4-Way match. So, long story short, the reason why that match never started was because they knew Reigns, if they had Reigns win the U.S. title, and then go on and be in the Universal Championship match, why would they have him win both? But they did have, Seth Rollins do that last year for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship and the U.S. title, but Seth Rollins is the man. Roman Reigns is just the guy. You can't... There's a big difference there.
Yes.
Seth Rollins is, way up on the ladder, and Roman Reigns is just at the start.
Yeah. So final grades for this one, I'm giving it a C+. Pretty average. It only gets to that plus just because of Cena Styles. Otherwise, it would not get us that extra plus for me. It'd probably just be like a C, C-. Because the car was poorly put together, in my opinion, in terms of match placement. You had the U.S. title match after the Universal title match. You had the WWE World title match 2 hours into the show. And the freaking 6-woman tag match actually followed that match now, where I remember as we talk about it more. That was after the World title match, after Cena Styles, so it didn't make any sense. Lots of matches were dull, pretty much. A couple of title matches here. And similar to what we'd see on Raw and SmackDown, I mentioned that a few times. These matches were similar to what you'd see on there. Some matches on Raw have been better than matches on this card, on this night. I've seen better matches on Raw. The main event was pretty garbage, left the crowd pissed, I think. They didn't really like the finish at all for that match. And compared to TakeOver, the crowd was not into it nearly as much, especially after Cena Styles, because they couldn't get anything together after that, because they used all their energy in that match, I would say, for the most part. Like, they weren't even that into the Universal title match because they didn't like the title design. So, I mean, the crowd wasn't into it. I wasn't into it as much, thanks because of the crowd partly, but it wasn't that great of a pay-per-view in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think it was either. It was all right.
Both not second largest pay-per-view of the year quality.
No.
This felt like I would say like a Battleground or a Fastlane.
Money in the Bank might be the second best pay-per-view this year. You know, because you had Ambrose win the Money in the Bank, and then you had the first match between Cena and Styles. You know, just for two of the matches. But I think both WrestleMania and SummerSlam didn't live up to the hype that they, you know, planned on it being. WrestleMania, obviously, because Rollins being hurt, you know, at that time. So, and now, you know, SummerSlam, the way the main event ended, as you said, was that the way it was supposed to end? We don't know. They say it was. I don't think it was, though. They're just trying to cover that up.
Well, maybe not.
Because,
maybe that was the finish, but not that much blood, I would say, from Randy Orton, for sure.
Yeah, the middle of the ring was a puddle of blood.
He turned over, and I saw that blood, I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
What just happened?
Yeah.
Like, initially, I'm like, oh, that's a terrible blade job by Randy.
Well,
initially.
Well.
And then I saw, like, the huge gash in his head, I'm like, wow, that's terrible.
Orton's had his share of getting bloody and messy.
Not recently, though.
Well,
when he was younger.
No, 2 years ago, I remember. At Money in the Bank, he hit his head off the ladder, and then he had his head down, and he turned up, and his whole head was just blood. That was the last time I remember him doing that. But, yeah, still, SummerSlam and didn't live up to the expectations.
No, definitely, I think we can agree on that. All right, go to the end of the show now. Question of the week time. Cal versus Hawaii is in Australia here coming up. Who do you got in this one?
I want to have to go with Hawaii. I'm taking a smaller school or a Pac-12 school in a neutral site game, but, you know, Hawaii is closer to Sydney, Australia. So I think, you know, maybe the jet lag, you know, might have an influence on the Cal players. Yeah, these guys have been out there for a while now, probably about a week. But, you know, I'm going to have to take Hawaii. This is his first college football game of the season. And there's going to be a lot more, obviously. And I'm very, very excited. But I'm going to take the Rainbow Warriors to defeat the Cal Golden Bears.
All right, I'll just go Cal. I'll pick the Pac-12 team. We'll go difference on this one. Just make it a little interesting, I would say.
Just because, I mean.
Yeah, just because, I guess. So that's going to wrap it up for this week. Subscribe to this YouTube channel if you haven't already. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at ATGL16. All of those links available in the description of this video. Answer the question of the week on Facebook or Twitter by voting in our poll. You can follow Luke at CoinLuke96 and me at CMA14 on Twitter as well. Also, don't forget to buy our merch, which you can contact us about using all of those social media platforms or emailing us at acrossthegoalline2016@gmail.com. And for Luke Goddard, I'm Corey Maines, and we will see you on the next edition of Across the Goal Line, live from the field.